Park Sang-gun. My name is Park Sang-gun. I'm 14 years old. I've grown up a bit. I lived in a mental hospital. The vice president of the hospital was Dr. Lee Yoon-seok. He was also my supervising doctor. Ever since I'd been sent there at 12 years old, he had been raping me. He was already 12 when he sent her? I thought he was way younger. I used to cry out loud in my room and hide, but they would scream at me to shut up. I tried keeping a diary to relieve my stress, but I realized the nurses would read it behind my back. When I was feeling extremely desperate, I would pick up the pen and stab myself with it. I forced myself not to cry, no matter how painful it was. It was an exercise. After a while, I gradually became numb to the pain. That way it would be less painful when I had to go to that room again. Most of the nurses in this hospital were women, but I did come to know one male nurse. His name was Lee Yong-chol. The other nurses said that he was the nephew of Lee Yoon-seok, and that was the only reason he got the job. Every Tuesday night he would take me to Lee Yoon-seok's office. He would then just wait outside until it was over. He would then bring me back to my room. One day he noticed my scars. He could tell that those were not caused by his uncle. After he found out that I had been hurting myself, he decided to confiscate my pen. Coward. He knew what his uncle had been doing to me. I also knew that he had read my diaries too. He was too afraid to stop his uncle, but he would take away my pen. I closed the door. I threw myself at his feet, held onto his legs, and began crying at the top of my lungs. As expected, he panicked and touched my head with his hands, trying to console me. Since that moment, he had become an ally of mine. As an ally, Lee Yong-chol would sometimes use his limited power to get me some small privileges. For instance, I could walk in the garden a little longer than the others. If I could hold on a little longer, maybe I could even find a chance to escape from here. Just when the tiniest ray of hope was beginning to show, I heard a piece of horrible news. My mum had died. I overheard it from the nurses. None of them would even tell me the news to my face. But they would gossip about me behind my back, commenting on what a poor child I was. I didn't want their pathetic sympathy. I just wanted Mum. For the last 2 years, no one had ever visited me. Why had Mum never come to visit me? I knew why. It must have something to do with Dad. He sold me off first, kept torturing Mum at home, and prevented her from visiting me. He was not my dad. He was a bad person, a monster. I wanted to kill him. I pretended that I hadn't heard the news. Every night I would cover my face with my blanket so the nurses wouldn't notice me crying. In secret, however, I began to plan my escape. Another Tuesday night. In a room without light, there was only pale moonlight. He and I, 2 people. Everything was exactly the same as 2 years ago, except for the lack of a sinister smell in the air. I had long given up the fight, so he no longer needed something like that to subdue me. But this night wouldn't be the same as usual. He didn't expect for me to pick up the chair and throw it at his head. He pushed me to the ground. Lee Yoon-seok was outraged. He slapped me square in the face twice with both of his hands. I fell to the ground. Everything looked like a blur, and I didn't have any more strength to fight back. The chair only broke the foam behind him. I knew I had to be physically stronger to have a chance. But the horrible diet and the mental and physical torture I'd been subjected to was only making me weaker and weaker every day. The door opened. I didn't have to look to know it was Lee Yong-chol. He had seen this scene countless times. He isn't feeling well today. Shall we wait until another day? Hey, pigs were flying. When did he start defending me? Oh, that was the sun, okay. I chuckled twice, despite my bleeding lips. Who gave you permission to speak? Facing the rage of his uncle, the little bit of courage Lee Yong-chol had mustered up crumbled immediately. He walked out of the room in silence and closed the door behind him. Nothing had changed. Lee Yoon-seok took off his belt and gave me an unusual lesson, followed by the usual routine. Nothing had changed. No, that wasn't true. Something had changed. I had changed. I was no longer that same kid from 2 years ago, even though I couldn't really remember what I had been like back then. Nevertheless, I knew one thing for sure. Even if I became a pile of worthless human garbage, I would not stay here forever. I wanted to go home. I had to go home. God, do you hear my wish? Park Sang-gun. Okay, we'll see. Oh, first of all, we've got another letter. A plan gone awry. Awry? Yeah, awry. I was lying still on my bed with my eyes closed. I could feel the breeze coming and going. The annoying mosquitoes kept interrupting my thoughts. Damn pests. I flicked the bloody body of a mosquito away like a small booger. Dinner time. A small tray was pushed inside through the tiny window. A bowl of rice, a plate of cabbage, 2 pieces of fried chicken, and a banana. Why do I only get 1 piece of chicken? The fat man in the opposite cell yelled at the guard who was delivering the meals. He didn't get an answer. I picked up the banana from the tray and started peeling it. My diet had actually become much healthier ever since I'd been sent here. I'd never had a meal on time back at the police station, and the food was always burgers, chicken fries, and occasional leftovers that had been around for far too long. There had been a few times that I got to eat some nice meals though, when Chang Kyung-min would bring over some of his homemade bentos. The kid would always say something like, "A healthy body is necessary to defend justice," which made him sound like a whiny old lady. But I was starting to miss that kid. I had no idea how he had been doing. He must be in a lot of trouble right now. Or maybe not. The people who had framed me must be keeping him out of this case altogether. What had happened to Min-jun was all my fault. On the day I went to rescue Ji-yeon, I tried to get Min-jun to join the mission, but I hadn't been able to reach him. The kid had always been the one person who'd never miss a call. It was the first time ever that I couldn't find him. I should have realized that something might have gone wrong then. He never showed up at the police station afterwards either. I told Chang Yeon-min that Min-jun had been sick, but I honestly had no idea where he had been. It turned out that he was dead, and his body had been hidden in my room. He must have known something, and they had killed him for it. The murderer must have also known that it was the same day as the anniversary of the lieutenant's death. He even knew that I would be very drunk that day, so he would have had a better chance of success. 2 birds with 1 stone. I had some idea of who that bastard could be, but I had no evidence at the moment. I needed to find a way to get out of here first. A tall shadow moved on the cell floor. The guard who had brought the tray was still here. He was watching me eat. Always like he was monitoring me. His name was Yong-hyuk. At least that was what I had heard the other guards calling him. He was over 2 meters tall and very muscular. He might be the most menacing person in the detention center. Anyone who stood before him might feel like they were standing in front of an impenetrable wall. However, Yong-hyuk had a secret. Detention Center number 6 was a prison that was used to exclusively hold police officers who had been in trouble. It did not belong to the police system and therefore was not under the supervision of the police bureaucracy. Therefore, everyone who had been thrown in here had to go through a ritual. The fat man in the opposite cell was locked up because of a 50 million won bribe. Every day he and I were forced to strip naked and were blasted by cold water. It wasn't that much different than a cold shower to me. But the fat man, he would be screaming bloody murder every time the water hit him. The more he screamed, however, the more excited the guards would get. For them it had turned into a kind of entertainment. Yong-hyuk's reaction, however, seemed a little different than the rest of the cheering mob. One of my best buddies was gay. I could sense the same vibe from him. The fat man yelled at me in a lowered voice. "Hey, can I trade this banana for your chicken?" Screw you. I suddenly had an idea, but I needed somebody's help. 20 minutes later, Yong-hyuk came back to take the trays away. There was something extra in the tray, a small paper note. Now, all I could do was wait until the middle of the night. 12 a.m. Most people here had fallen asleep, but I was sitting in a chair in the interrogation room that had seen numerous occupants. A piece of yellow tape covered my mouth. My hands had been cuffed behind my back. Many brand new scars had been added to the current collection on my body. I had made a mistake. Yong-hyuk was standing under the fluorescent light with a belt in his hands. His uniform was now soaking wet with sweat. Just a moment ago, the belt had hit me on the left eye, which was so bruised that I couldn't even open it anymore. I absolutely hated these simple-minded meatheads, especially when they could overpower me. If he had simply agreed to my proposal, I would have let my buddies find him a few handsome guys as a thank you. Then everybody would have been happy. Now he was just torturing me for nobody's benefit. Well, since enticement had not worked out, that left me with the only other choice: threats. Although, how was I supposed to threaten him under the current circumstances? Should I summon that guy? It didn't seem like a good idea. Young Hyuk seemed like he would never get tired. The pain he had inflicted on me was almost to the edge of what I could tolerate. I had been trying my best to control it, but in the end, he still woke up. The light from the swinging bulb cast some moving shadows on his impatient face. Idiot. I took out the pen and stabbed it into him. The pen went right through his eye socket and into his brain. He was dead in an instant. So was my consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself back in the cell. It was a different one this time, and there were more guards at the door. I felt my pocket. As usual, there was another one. I opened it, and it said, "Your clothes stink. I told him to get you 2 new sets." That bastard had landed me into such a big mess, and all he cared about was some clean clothes? I now had another life on my hands. Minjun's case was still highly inconclusive, but this one was much more straightforward. I had indeed killed Young Hyuk. How could this have happened? Damn it. Kangbaek-ya. Okay. Not a lot of options here. Yep. That way. That should be an S on both sides. At least, I hope for it. Young Hyuk was hit straight in the face by the chair. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. He watched as I broke the handcuffs with my bare hands, and he couldn't process what he was seeing. 1, 2, 3. I stomped his bloody face with my feet over and over again. I'd once seen myself break another unfortunate bastard's arm with one stomp. If I kept going, he was going to die. I stepped away from the corner of the dark room and walked towards the center. The mysterious invisible force appeared again almost immediately. It was as if there were numerous dark hands that were pushing on my shoulders, grabbing at my ankles, trying to stop me from walking into the light and regaining control of my body. I was pushed down to the ground, but I kept crawling. More hands were grabbing my feet, my legs, and dragging me in the opposite direction. I could not give in. I would not give in. At last, I grabbed my feet. "Enough, you bastard. Get out of here." The hands suddenly scattered away. I could see clearly again. Young Hyuk was crouching in the corner, looking at me with fear. He reminded me of a frightened little rabbit. I had scared him, and he had not realized that the person standing in front of him was a different one now. There was a wallet on the floor. It wasn't mine. I picked it up. There were a few bills, a credit card, and a receipt from a gay bar from only a few days ago, as well as a family photo. A beautiful wife, a lovely daughter. What a happy family. The happy ladies surely had no idea of the secret life that the husband and father of the family had been leading. The little rabbit had no other choice. Well, that's where our threats come in. I plunged the pen deep into his throat. He stumbled back, pulled out the pen and threw it onto the floor. Lots of blood was gushing out of the hole in his neck. I could see that he wanted to kill me very badly. However, with one hand covering his wound, he tripped and lost his balance, making a mess of his office. Soon he was lying on the floor with his eyes wide open, but he was no longer breathing. He was dead, but that was too good for him. Before anyone noticed what had happened, I quickly searched the entire room. I found his hospital keycard, some cash, and a Swiss Army knife. I ripped his clothes and pants off him and put them on myself so that mine wouldn't get bloody. Then I cut his thing off. I stuffed it into his mouth. In that moment I felt so relieved. Even the air in this room felt suddenly cleansed. I opened the window and slid down the drain pipe. The security guard on duty was watching TV in his office at the main gate. I ducked down and snuck past his window, opened the main gate with a swipe of the key card and ran outside. Finally, I was free. Finally, I could go home. What home are you talking about? I walked all the way home with the flimsy clothes I was wearing. I walked past Alex's seafood store. I walked past Sumi's family bakery. I walked past a tobacco and alcohol store that had forgotten to lock up. I picked up the most expensive bottle of vodka from the shelf. It was for my dad. Twice a week, 8 times a month. Multiplied by 12, 90, 96 times 2, 192. Let me round it up to 200. I was walking briskly. At the same time, I was quietly calculating how many times Mum had been hit by Dad for the past 2 years. Just as an estimate. It was almost sunrise when I finally saw my familiar yet strange home. As I expected, Dad was sound asleep. I changed into Mum's favorite coat. Then I went into the kitchen, picked up the knife that Mum used to cut meat. At last, I came to my dad's bed. Dad, I'm home. 1, 2, 3, 66, 67. The sound of the knife going in and out of his body was almost a musical melody. 122, 123, 124, 199, 200. Blood was splashed all over the bed and the floor. It was disgusting. I sprinkled the vodka that I brought home all around the bed and the room. Then I lit a match. Bye, Dad. Bye, Mum. The small flame was jumping and growing. It was becoming bigger and bigger. In the end, it grew so big that it swallowed this place I used to call home. I had never seen anything more beautiful. From the ashes, I would start a brand new life. Okay. I feel like he might not be in the completely wrong place in the mental institution right now. Not in that one, but maybe in a different one. Is that the... Yep, that's the end of his story. Okay, we've got one more right here. Alicia. JL 7042. The flight from Hong Kong to Tokyo. This was my first time on a plane, yet I wasn't as excited as I had imagined I would be. I closed my eyes, hoping that I could fall asleep until landing. After a while, the plane encountered some turbulence. My face tightened a little, not because I was scared, but because I was annoyed that it had disrupted my dream. I was dreaming of Carlos. In the dream, we finally got to see each other again. It was late at night. Even though we had not seen each other for such a long time, neither of us said anything. It was so dark that I couldn't even see what he looked like as a grown-up. His lips moved and he was about to say something, but suddenly the ground beneath us morphed into an enormous wave and swept me away. I opened my eyes. The boy next to me handed me one of his earbuds. He probably thought I was afraid. Some tender music was flowing out of the earbud. I smiled at him with gratitude. He had short and curly dark hair. He looked like he was about 18 years old. Carlos would be around the same age now. I fell asleep again, although I didn't go back to the same dream this time. 4 hours later, at the front desk of the Prince Hotel in Shinjuku. I was checking in. Coincidentally, I ran into the boy who was next to me on the plane. Also coincidentally, his room was right next to mine. He said his name was Lin Wei. He was here on a trip by himself and suggested that we could travel together if it was okay with me. I agreed, but it would have to wait until after I finished my business here. The sun was about to set when he knocked on my door. He told me that he had rented a car and asked if I would like to go take a ride with him along the beach. I said yes. His eyes were a little red and we didn't say anything to each other on the way. He didn't go directly to the beach, instead he circled around Shinjuku a couple of times at first. That doesn't sound good. If he weren't so upset, I would have almost suspected that he had figured out who I really was. I never knew that the target this time was still a kid. Half an hour ago I had received an instruction from Ray. The target this time was the person staying in the room next to mine. Ah, Lin Wei. He was the only child of the boss of Lin Inc., who ran the Black Dragon Gang. Whenever Ray gave me an assignment, I never questioned the reason. Although this time I didn't really need to ask. The big boss of Lin Inc. was in his final years. Some elders in the corporation had brought up the idea of looking for a successor. Obviously the big boss wanted his own son to succeed him, and everyone knew it. But I knew Ray too well. He wanted to be the successor. The gang had plenty of enemies in the criminal underworld. This time Lin Wei was traveling to Japan alone, without any bodyguards. It meant that this would be the perfect opportunity for Ray to take him out of the equation. It was quite windy by the ocean. There were a couple of tourists hanging around on the beach. I planned to complete the assignment once they left. Lin Wei stood there, facing the ocean. He closed his eyes and spread his arms. He looked like a bird who was about to ride the wind and fly into the sky. Miss, have you ever thought about what we live for in this world? I fixed my hair that was flying in the wind. For me, simply being able to live is good enough. I never thought about something so deep. Lin Wei kept his posture. Well, do you have an important person in your life? I do. I looked at the ocean. He put his arms down. What would you do if you couldn't be with that person? I'd wait. He looked back at me. His face was covered in tears. What if you know that you'll only be waiting for nothing? I suddenly realized that I'd never thought about this possibility. Miss, I know what you're doing here. I have seen many other people like you. Lin Wei unbuttoned his shirt and revealed the numerous horrifying scars on his body. In 2 years my father will hand the company to me. Miss, you of all people should know how many people want me dead. All of these years, my only wish has been to be with that person on my birthday. I was born in the winter, near Christmas. I would always dream about the two of us decorating our own Christmas tree, walking along the festive streets and holding hands like a real couple. But year after year, I could never make it happen. And I will never be able to make it happen in the future. I will not let the person I love get hurt because of me. So I can't be with that person. Not in this life. I'm tired of a life like this. The last tourist had just left the beach. He gave me one last smile and started walking into the ocean. The water gradually went over his waist, his shoulder. A few minutes later, I dived into the ocean. I grabbed his hand. I gasped for the salt-tasting air, feeling like I was going to be swallowed by the crushing waves at the very next moment. I lay there on the beach. I was completely wet. Lin Wei was lying next to me. Why didn't you just let me die? Isn't that your mission? Why? I didn't know. Perhaps I was hoping there would be another possibility for him. It had been 10 days. I still didn't have a strategy to help him. Although I worked for Ray, I didn't really have all of the information in the organization. Even in the gang, not a lot of people were aware of my existence. Therefore, I didn't have any useful connections. I was sitting on the couch in my room. A bunch of empty candy boxes were piling up next to my hand. Lin Wei must be an extremely important target to Ray. Letting Lin go meant that I had betrayed him. I might have made the stupidest decision of my life, just out of that one moment of sympathy. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. The person was intentionally keeping them light, so I knew instantly that it couldn't be a regular tenant. My 4 years of training told me immediately that it was someone like me, and he or she was good at this job too. Ray surely wouldn't show me any mercy. Alicia. Alright. Where is this going? What can we do here? That, I guess. Lin Wei was right. I had the blood of over a dozen people on my hands. If I were to be with Carlos, I would bring him nothing but misery. The dark ocean was calling me. Heavenly Father had given me a chance for redemption right here, right now. I grabbed Lin Wei and we disappeared into the darkness together. Oh, so that's what that was going for. Huh, okay. So how do we do the opposite of that? Okay, that's awful. Oops, that didn't move, did it? Lin 1 was right, okay. The surface was almost pitch black, beneath which hid many invisible but violent torrents. The water was also much colder than I expected, and I could feel the chill in my bones. Lin Wei grabbed my hand and he was guiding me ahead. I suddenly understood. Heavenly Father was giving me a chance for redemption right here, right now. Okay. Also bad. I see. Just randomize it, I don't know. The hairdryer was buzzing. I was sitting in my hotel room, drying my hair with my eyes closed. I was afraid. I was afraid that I would see myself in a foggy mirror and that I wouldn't even recognize my own reflection. In the dark water, I watched Lin Wei as he struggled to breathe. I felt his grip on my hand tighten, then loosen. After confirming his death, I came back up to the beach at a different spot and took a taxi back to the hotel. It was just another assignment. Even if he had lived a hard life, even if he had reminded me of someone, there was nothing else I could have done to help him. But it was just another excuse. The truth was I simply couldn't stand the thought of leaving Ray. That same evening, I told Ray about Lin Wei's final moments, but his response surprised me. Starting from tomorrow, you're free. Interesting. Alright, got some new post, but we'll see what that is in the next episode. Thanks for watching, I'll see you guys then. Bye.